Hello, friends, and welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. My name is Scott Cowan, and I'm the host of the show. Each episode, I have a conversation with an interesting guest who is living in or from Washington State. These are casual conversations with real and interesting people. I think you're going to like the show. So let's jump right in with today's guest. Well, welcome back to Ryan Perkins. Ryan is back for a second visit here. I don't know. Maybe that says more about Ryan than it does about me, but thanks, Ryan. We're going to talk OlyTown soccer, but I think our focus today is going to be on the USL Women's League stuff. So, Ryan, let's walk through that journey that you guys just kind of are on right now.
Yeah, in 2000, so it was 2022. We were exploring, signing a franchise into the USLW, which is a nationwide women's professional amateur league. It's just essentially designed for like a summer season for D1, D2 college players and maybe some pros that are needing to get some time on the field. So we signed with the USL for the women's team. I think it was September of last year. And then this was our first season this year. And it was just kind of a whirlwind.
Mm-hmm. Question. How many I don't know if you know this or not, but how many teams are in the women's league of the USL? Because the men's league was shockingly large.
Yeah, it's about half the size of the men's. So I think even this new season, I think we're approaching 50 clubs, possibly even.
Okay. Still a lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot of clubs.
Maybe even 60 by the time this new season rolls around. So, but the men's USL2 has 124 clubs, I believe, which is huge and massive. But the USL2 has been around for a longer time than the USLW.
Okay. All right. So you guys signed up, and before we hit record, you were kind of sharing with me just briefly about the abundance of interest from players.
Yeah, I think because there, the USLW hadn't been here in Washington, and also Oregon, and there wasn't kind of this big West Coast feel. It's primarily East Coast. There's a lot of players that all of a sudden were like, "Hey, we have to go play in Olympia. We have to go play at OlyTown. This is a path to pro division that I could keep fit and then also get looks for the next level and the professional ranks." And so it was crazy how fast the player interests came together after the announcement.
How many players are on a women's team?
Technically on game day, you're looking at about 18 players. But the player pool can range from 30 to 40. Because there's kind of this rotation revolving door. Players have to report back to college early. Some people don't get out of college, till later later in June. And so it was kind of it's a big revolving door, but I'd say 30 to 40 is the player pool.
Okay. But 18 on game day.
18 on game day.
Okay. So walk me through, I know, because because you talked to me before, I know very little about the sport specifically, but walk me through what was required of your ownership group to get into the USLW. What did they what were they looking for? Because you mentioned that Washington and Oregon weren't in the league. It was mostly East Coast. So I'm guessing that the league was looking to expand, but what were they looking for from expansion partners?
I think they're probably, mainly vetting clubs that have a vetted footprint, social media, website, a team that's been around for years that has got a significant following. And as you know, semi-pro and pro-am teams sometimes can have 25 people in the stands, and some have 1,000 plus. And so right. I think that really goes into the process for USL to figure out who has a large footprint, who's been around, who's successful, and who takes it seriously, because game days can really vary. Also, they look at stadium compliance. Can you hold 500 to 2,000 people? Locker room, showers, all the amenities that is normal for a pro pro organization. And then obviously there's a financial franchise fee that's considerably more than, a standard semi-pro or pro-am league. So there's a lot that goes into it from like a planning perspective, an ownership side, and getting that all dialed in to make a case to enter the USL. And OlyTown checked all the boxes, and including broadcast. We have a pro broadcast. We stream all the games on our YouTube channel, HD, multiple cameras, play-by-play graphics, commercials. It's like if we try and make it feel like a pro environment, top down.
I have comparables for the West Coast League. That's the summer league for baseball around Washington, Oregon, British Columbia, and Alberta. So a lot of the stuff that you're saying is very similar to how what West Coast League handles teams for baseball. Yep. So I love asking this question to people and in play along. What went wrong? What surprised you that you weren't prepared for? I always love hearing the gotchas because I think we learn so much from them.
The funny one, from an ownership or management perspective, essentially thinking that your team is going to actually make the national playoff and have to have multiple flights and hotels and meals out of, in California or Texas or Florida. And so in our case, one thing that we happen to have, remaining dollars in the bank account, but I guess we're kind of blindsided. I had no idea that the team would go undefeated in our inaugural USLW year.
That's impressive, man.
Number one seed into the USL National Playoff, and all of a sudden it turned into we need to fly out 18 players and 4 staff. And it was the first time the club had ever gotten on an airplane in the history of our club since 2014. And so that was learning on the fly. Let me tell you, it was a stressful 5 days.
Well, and airline tickets and hotels and food on the road, that all adds up pretty quick. Where'd you guys have to fly to?
We ended up going to San Francisco, kind of that Bay Area. And we were the only number 1 seed to have to travel to another state because the other seeds were actually from California. So it was less, troublesome for the USL and all these clubs if those 3 from California just went to Frisco and we flew down. So, but it was definitely a different pace for us.
All right. And yeah, that whole herding of cats and the scheduling and all of that. So you guys went undefeated. That's kind of, well, first off, that's impressive for any team to go undefeated in a season, much less a expansion first year, franchise, if you will. What on earth happened there? I mean, how did you guys assemble such a powerful team?
I think, first and foremost, it was like the coaching aspect. And what I've kind of learned from the USL2 on the men's side first year was it's really important to have coaches that have a network and are good at recruiting. And I think what happened is not only were we an expansion, into, the Pacific Northwest, we're the only team in Washington. There's a plethora of Division I schools here, but I think the coach really is a recruiting specialist. And before you know it, it was just like Penn State showing up, UCLA, University of Washington, University of Oregon, and all of a sudden it just kept growing, all these D1 commits, and all of a sudden it was like Mariah Lee from the OL Reign is committed to play in kind of this transition year before she gets back into pro club soccer again because she had an injury. And it's just like, what? It was just blew up so fast, and before you knew it, we were watching these games and it was like 3-0, 5-0, 7-0. We had a good battle with a Portland squad called United PDX where we tied one game 2-2, and beat them down there on the road 1-0. But it was a pretty significant margin in talent.
Okay, so you got most of the women were D1.
Yeah,
schools?
majority D1. We even had,
Okay.
I think it was 9 players from our team made the NCAA national tournament for their respective colleges, and
Okay.
that's 9 out of 11 in the starting lineup. Essentially, that's made not only like played NCAA Division One ball, but they all played on teams that made it to the national college cup.
Played on good squads that were competitive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Okay.
was pretty eye opening. It's probably the highest level of sport that and talent that's probably come into Olympia, because there is no other Division One or pro teams or anything going on down here. And so I think for the first time it was like, wow, this is a pretty significant sporting event here for Olympia.
And where were the games played at?
We were at South Sound Stadium, kind of in Lacey there,
Hmm.
right off I-5, and it holds about 2,000 people. But you know, we play there. It's a nice stadium. Has the amenities, locker rooms, and a press box that we can actually film the game and have multiple cameras. So it's a good fit for us.
Okay. And the men's team plays there too, correct?
Yes, they do.
Okay. So you have a working arrangement. Who controls that stadium? Is it the school district?
Yeah, it's a school district. We actually have, I think we've kind of touched on this before, but there's still a glaring issue in our town is facilities and fields. There's technically
Hmm.
no soccer stadiums in the region, and then there's only one actual soccer field that's turf and has lights in the county. So our problem is every single field has football lines, has a track, complete, it completely disrupts the viewing of a USL standard match. And so it's a tough county to play high level soccer in.
Right. And fields are not inexpensive to create from the land cost, much less putting a field in with stands and the infrastructure one needs, like showers and lights and press boxes and everything. So
Yes.
that's a huge undertaking for a community to take
But
on.
I think
Um,
that this has maybe gotten people's attention where it needs. Local municipality, city, Parks and Rec. Um,
mhm.
there's some organizations in town that I think are looking at this and saying, "Wow, we really need to invest in something, because if we don't, this might go away, or this deserves something bigger and better than playing at a standard school district football stadium." And so,
Right, right.
I think it could create change here locally.
How did the community embrace this new team? Was there enthusiasm from the get go, or is it taking a while during the season for them to warm up, or how has the region responded?
I think there was a lot of buzz about the women's team. I think when they started seeing that we had a couple of Olympic national team signings that were a goalkeeper from UCLA,
Uh,
Niku Purcell, and Ava Uribe played on the. She was at Syracuse and she played on the United States youth national team. And I think there was a lot of buzz. It was like, wow, is this
mm-hmm.
really happening? Because it's one thing to see, a post on Instagram or a website or a press release, and it's like, what, really? Like, that's really happening at Olympia? And so I think there was a lot of initial buzz, but I feel like, and I think as some people know that may be listening, and especially you with semi-pro, pro-am, there's a lot of communities are so used to going to Seattle to catch a Mariners or Sounders or Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this element of trying to change people's perspective of where to find great sports entertainment or great sports to watch. And that's where we're still in the infancy of providing something high level that the community's still not used to. Oh, well, they're playing at some high school over here at the stadium, but it's a bunch of soccer stars from the nation, and what does that really mean, or what's really happening? And so the crowds were okay, I feel like it got better and better as the season went on. Obviously, being undefeated helps and clinching the national playoff. But I feel like Olympia is still kind of learning that there is potential for this to be a sports market.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree with you on that. It is kind of, sometimes you have to build it and they will come, but they show up slower than you'd like them to. You mentioned, undefeated and then the playoffs. How did you do in the playoffs?
We were actually a one and done.
Okay.
So there was kind of a little bit of drama because we were the number one seed and we were the only team that had to fly all the way to San Francisco. And then the home clubs down there were organizing the hotels, and they were putting us in hotels that were an hour, 2 hours of traffic away from the field. And it just got kind of weird and goofy a little bit. And, excuses aside, I think it was a great experience. We had a lot of shots on goal. We lost 1-0. And, the teams out of that area ended up making it to I think the semifinals of the entire USL Nationals. And so yeah, we're one and done, but I do feel like, there's a potential here that if we could host, it might be a different outcome there.
Okay. What are you looking forward to for the 2024 season? What do you think will go smoother this year? I mean, you got a season under your belt. You got air travel kind of like, oh yeah, maybe we will have to travel. So you got to kind of think that in the background. But what are you excited for 2024? Are there more teams coming into the area so that because you just said it was just you in Portland. So where else did you have to travel during the season to play?
There's teams in Eugene, Salem. There was 2 out of actually Portland. And there is some talk, I've seen on Instagram and social media that there might be a team coming out of Spokane. There's kind of a large soccer footprint being designed by USL in Spokane. And so there's some talk that they might enter the picture, but I feel like they're just far enough away that not going to really impact a whole lot of player pool or anything. And I think looking to next year, there's a lot of things that we're already addressing early right now. So we're prepared for next season, including recruiting and tryouts and apparel, getting things all set up and understanding blackout dates in the stadium. But I think for us, it'll be different it's really been cool to see the commits that are already coming in because the women's college season just ended. And so all of them are thinking about their future. And it's already really so humbling and amazing to already be hearing from players that are wanting to come back immediately. Like, hey, I'm making plans to be back in Washington to play for OlyTown. I'm super excited. And I feel like that is reflective of we did something right in year one, even though it was behind the scenes a real crazy, stressful time. But the fact that the players had a good experience and they're letting other players know that they're friends with in their network around the United States, like this is a place where you want to play. And I feel like it's really humbling and amazing to get that feedback immediately already.
I got a couple more questions for you. So let's walk before we go on. This is both 2023 season and soccer in general. So the season's a 2-month season, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Correct. Okay. Walk me through a typical week for the women's team. Practice days. What's the typical week look like for the team?
Yeah, usually, coming off a Sunday or a Monday, it's usually they get a little bit of a break because the games are kind of on like a Friday, Saturday, or sometimes a combination, but like a Thursday night. And then you go to, maybe a walkthrough on Friday and then a game on Saturday, and then get a little bit of a break, maybe go to the gym or see an athletic trainer. But mainly we're looking at about 3 trainings a week. And what we've heard is because we had such a large player pool of, Division I and pro athletes, the trainings were actually maybe more exciting from a player development perspective because the players were so high level that the trainings felt harder than the games.
Okay.
And so there is a lot of competitive, like a very competitive atmosphere. There's a lot of fun. So, looking at trainings Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe a road game or a home game Thursday, maybe a little break Friday, game on Saturday. So there's always some action going on, but there is downtime, and it was kind of cool. We would see that players were, from out of town or from out of state or even out of the country. We had some international players. They would go hiking at Mount Rainier. They would do the loop around the Olympic Peninsula, around the Olympic Mountains, and go to, Forks, Port Angeles, Hurricane Ridge, and go into downtown Seattle to Pike Place. And so there was this like tourist kind of atmosphere where they were on their off days. All the women would bond and get together, and they would go do outings and hiking, and it was awesome.
And how many staff does it take to prepare and train and put on game day for the women's team?
The technical staff, we have a head coach. His name was Chris Wells, and he's a D1. He's a D1 assistant coach and also a recruiting coordinator. And then we had an assistant coach, Rachel Ross, out of Tacoma. She played at Pacific Lutheran. Then we had a general manager. And then we did contract with some goalkeeper coaches to come down kind of sporadically throughout the season, sprinkled them in. And then actual game day, you're looking at 5 to 7 staff per game, and then another probably 3 to 4 volunteers that were crowd control, maybe some ticketing and things like that. And then the live stream and broadcast and PA and all that is another probably 5 professionals that we contract out. So a couple videographers, a broadcast director, a color play-by-play, and PA. Then we also have a photographer come out for every single game. So it's kind of a lot in the end.
That's a lot. And is that about the typical staff for the men's league too?
Yeah, it's mirrored. So it's the exact same crew comes out for the men's.
Okay. So as far as game day staff, not coaching staff, the coaching staff's different on the men's.
Yeah,
league,
right? the men's team, there was 2 assistant coaches. So I think there was 1 additional coach, but it was more of probably more of a player development coach that was maybe focused on someone that maybe played USL at that level, that was on the staff to kind of help with like player centric things. But otherwise it's pretty much the same, mirrored across both teams.
Okay. Where are practices held at? Are they still at the South Sound Center, or do you have practices in other locations?
Yeah, we do practices at the Regional Athletic Complex, which is in Lacey. They hold pretty big baseball tournaments too, but that's the actual field. That's the only turf lit soccer field in Thurston County is owned by the city of Lacey, and it's at the RAC, the Regional Athletic Complex, and so we do a lot of trainings there. And then, but there's kind of this idea that maybe we might venture up north and do a couple sessions a week, because there's a lot of players that come from Bellevue, Seattle, et cetera, and coaches come from up north too. At the end of the day, there's actually not a whole lot of the technical staff and players that actually like live in Olympia. So, there's some talk of maybe, holding a couple practices, maybe in Tacoma or Seattle, that type of thing. But yeah.
Okay. Walk me through what's going to take for prep for the 24 season now. Where are you at in the process? And walk me up to the opening night.
Yeah, at this point, there's a lot of kind of nailing down recruits and actually coaching staff. This is a path to professional division and league. And so it's designed to get people to the next level. And that doesn't just include, players, it includes the coaching staff. And so the coaching staff that had a bunch of success last year in the USL, fielding offers, looking at other opportunities across the United States at the pro level. And so there's kind of like a reshuffling of the decks sometimes at this level. I would say I have a good feeling about our coaching staff being actually retained, which is really rare. And I think, it's all about finding out what players want to come back, what new players that can really positively impact the team are going to want to commit, maybe travel here or live here for a few months. And so there's the recruiting aspect, and then we do give all the local communities the opportunity to try out for the team. So it's not always this, oh, we're going to go recruit all these D1 or pro players. We actually give all the players in the community opportunity through an open tryout. We usually hold 1 to 2 of them, usually one around the holidays and then one in February, March. And then essentially, register, show up, run through drills, small-sided games, and then a big scrimmage. And we have a lot of technical staff there evaluating players. And there's always a good chunk, I would say, 5 to 7 players that come out of those large open tryouts that actually make the player pool. So last year we had about maybe 120, 130 people try out at our open tryout combined for our men's and women's teams last year. So there's a good chunk. And then we dial everything in terms of housing, because last year we had about 10 women in host families here in Olympia and Tacoma. And then we had about 4 for the men's side. So there's always this, we got to go find the host families. And that is a whole other beast and kind of stressful, but it's fun. And it ends up being usually 99% a really good experience for both the host family and the player. And then we're really looking at schedules released. That's always a big deal with USL, January, February. And then we kick off in May. So first practices are beginning of May. And then it's right after the college spring seasons kind of end and school gets out across the country. And then before you know it, May 20, May 25, you're all starting your first games and you're playing, 2 games probably a week until 4th of July. And then the national playoffs happen after that. So it's just, it's a lot of planning and prep, and all of a sudden, boom, you're like, you don't have a life for 2 months.
I understand that one. Okay. I do. I understand that one. But that's just one of the teams that you guys have. But before I ask you to change gears, I'm going to totally throw you a curveball.
Oh boy.
Does 12-0 sound good to you?
12-0 is a great number. I think I'm hoping for it.
Well, they are. They're 12-0, right?
Yeah. It's
so for the listener who's going, what on earth is he talking about? Ryan was a member of the University of Washington Huskies football team, and University of Washington football team this year undefeated so far, going into the Pac-12, the last Pac-12 championship game against the arch rival Oregon Ducks. Boy. I'll be honest with you, I don't have a good feeling about that, but I really, and I'm not a big Husky. I went to Central, so I can root for and against teams because, who cares about Central? I'm not a huge Husky fan. I do like the Huskies, but I think what they're doing is really special, and I'd really like to see them get a chance to go to the national playoff. I really would. I'd like to see them have a shot. I don't think they'll go very far, just because Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State.
Yeah, it's a lot of things. Stars really have to align.
Yeah, but this team this year has been fun to watch.
Yeah, it's been incredible. I went to a couple games. I flew down to Tucson and watched them get by Arizona. That was a close one. And then I watched them play Utah at home. And I met up with some alumni there as you mentioned, used to kick field goals for the Huskies back in the day. And it's been great to watch. And even watching the kicker out there make the final kick in the Apple Cup, And there was kind of a funny moment when I was watching. I think his name's Grady Gross. He lined up. I think it was a 43-yarder right down the middle, and I remember looking at the kick and staring at the placement and going, "Oh my goodness, that's the exact same kicking spot I kicked at in the same direction in the same game, Apple Cup." And I made mine. It was in 2007, but it was just weird because I was looking, I was like, "Oh, this is what it looks like on the other side." And yeah, he made a great kick, and yeah, I really hope that they can beat the Ducks. It's
I hope they can beat the Ducks. Anybody from listening from Oregon, I hope they can beat the Ducks. All right. I'm sorry. Well, let me ask, I wanted to ask you this. I was kind of going to ask you, like, as a kicker, that moment, that's what you live for, right? Or is that what you're scared to death of?
I feel
A little of both?
I guess probably depends on how much ice are in your veins. I think I mean, I've been in situations like that, and it's a mixture of um, you're very very nervous, but it's just a ton of adrenaline, and the adrenaline just takes over to where like nothing really, I feel like nothing really happens in your brain. It's just like overload. It's so loud on a
Mm-hmm.
game winning kick or a game tying kick. And I did this in, so I have a, kind of a negative outcome that happened one year when I was kicking in the Apple Cup, where I had made the kick in, to go to overtime. And then, that a feeling of elation of being the guy that got it done. And then, the first overtime and made another kick and was the hero in that moment. And then unfortunately in double overtime, I finally missed. And it wasn't to lose the game, but it was essentially, still tied. And
Mm-hmm.
we had an opportunity to do something on defense, but at the same time, it's complete overload. And yeah, it really changes your life if you make or miss it. Let me just put it that way. Either way, it changes your life in so many ways mentally. And it's very interesting. I think it's a whole psychological, should be a whole psych class in college, to be honest with you. So yeah.
Well, for the kid that kicked this field goal against the Cougars, I read that he got a scholarship now. He's now a scholarship athlete.
Yeah,
So, the kick was
yeah,
worth
and
it for
it's
him.
like, he's on he's on ESPN, he's on Sports Center, Fox Sports, he's on every single
Right.
social media for getting this full right. Not only did he make the kick, but getting this full right, and it can change your life, and it's so awesome
Right.
to see. It's so awesome to see for him.
But to transition this back to OlyTown and to the USL and all that, playing well in a USL league game can be a life-changing event too. It can get you exposure, it can open doors, and give the player a chance to climb the ladder as well.
Absolutely, we had even just a micro kind of example of this is we had 3 players that signed pro contracts within 30 days after playing for OlyTown.
Yeah, see, there you
Mariah
go.
Lee went to the top A-League division in Australia, which, Australia and New Zealand were hosting the World Cup for women this last summer. And so soccer is really massive down there. Beautiful, big soccer stadiums, huge fan base. And Mariah Lee signed with them.
Ryan, I just lost you. Oh, there you are. Sorry.
Big contract down there in Australia with Adelaide United. And then we had a couple gals sign in Spain, professional contracts. And so, and I'm hearing that there's a few other gals that were just wrapping up their senior seasons in the last couple of weeks that are going to be going pro. And so it's just, now it's crazy to think that OlyTown now has like this whole other part of the website that talks about players that went pro that played that OlyTown, and it's really cool.
It's exciting, isn't it? It's fun.
Yes, it just you feel like you're a part of the process, and you do, and as you probably know with the baseball and the semi-pro program with baseball, is you get to kind of feel like a family for a little bit. Especially like like we had a ton of players fly in, and you're taking care of them with housing, food, trying to find them work in town, like traveling together, hotel stays, airplane rides, and it's just like everybody just needs each other, and you become like this little family for a few months, but it sticks with you forever. There's still people still chatting, and messages and texts and checking in and seeing how people are doing. And I feel like that's probably one of the better good feeling takeaways that I've had from signing with USL is it really does feel different than anything we've ever done.
I know my neighbor here in town was a host parent for the Apple Sox 20 years ago, and their player ended up playing in the big leagues. And they still talk to him.
That's so cool.
They still, yeah. I mean, he stayed with them for 2 months, and 20 years later, they still hear from him 2 or 3 times a year. And this is a guy that's gone on and pitched for the Mariners for a while, pitched for other teams in the major leagues, and they still communicate with him. And I think it doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's just not a good fit. Sometimes life just gets in the way and you don't communicate, but there are these stories that you hear of host parents having these lifelong bonds with somebody that was sharing their roof for a summer. It sounds like the same thing happens in WSL, or excuse me, WSL. Yeah, mixing my leagues here. USL.
Yeah. It's incredible. There was even cases where it's like there's business owners in town. There's politicians in town that are hosting. It's like there's also a network being generated too for them, where it's just like, well, if my playing days are done, maybe I'm going to move to Olympia and work for these people that are business leaders in town, and it's just interesting.
So I'm going to shift gears to the other teams that you have. So you guys have multiple. This is what's interesting to me. This is the difference between like baseball and in your league and what you're doing. You guys have more than 2 teams. You have more than a women's USL and a men's USL. You have arena soccer, indoor soccer as well. Walk me through that a little bit, because once again, that's me just not knowing the sports. What, from a level standpoint, where are these players at?
It's completely different. A D1 soccer star on an outdoor field is probably going to look like a fool on the indoor arena platform, because it's a completely different game. And it's funny, through the years with this arena soccer thing, it's like hockey. There's these boards, it's a glass, it's a short field, it's small goals, there's huge hits, there's faster pace action, there's 15 goals in a game between both teams, and it's like organized chaos. It feels just so nuts. And it's funny that some of the best players are actually in their 30s and a little overweight, and are able to knock people around and make shot opportunities happen, and they rip them, and it goes in the back of the goal, and the place goes absolutely nuts. And I just feel like, and I was telling Jason Smith, who's a business partner of mine, where I said, it's funny, I look forward to USL and I look forward to arena for like 2 different reasons. USL, I look forward to watching just the game of soccer played at like the purest best level. It is so incredible to watch the flow and the quickness and just the crisp everything, pass, touch, shoot, like everything is almost perfect when I'm watching that. But then like I love going to the arena because it's just crazy, like gladiator type entertainment. It's like, who's gonna who's gonna survive today? It's like it's got this like incredible feel. You got the beer garden, you got the big crowd, stadium room only. It gets loud because the noise is retained in this area and in this pavilion, and it's just completely different experience. But it's crazy to have all of them, but it makes it unique that we can have year-round cycle of people to watch soccer in these different forms in this community. And I think it definitely differentiates us from a lot of people in the region.
Where do you get your, like you said, you describe kind of a players in their 30s and slightly overweight, but where do you get your players for this league?
Yeah, and I should probably correct myself. There's always a few of them.
No, we're going to leave that in, by the way. So, but no, in all seriousness, where does one find the talent to field these teams?
Yeah, I think what it is, a lot of the people I just described are probably, most of those people are former collegiate athletes that are, maybe have moved into Olympia and started a family, or Tacoma and started a family, or working professionals. And then I would say 80% of our roster is actually college players, but they're usually local because we're playing during college seasons. And so it's like, UW, University of Oregon, Gonzaga, these teams the players just can't like drive down the road and play for us. They've got school and they've got off season, the workouts. And so what we find is the majority of our players who are fit, and this is why I'm going to step it back, are fit. They're on top of their game, is like Evergreen State College, St. Martin's University, Pacific Lutheran University, University of Puget Sound, places like smaller kind of colleges like that, where they live in town. It's either 5 minutes or a 20-minute drive. You're here and you get to play in a really kind of a fun atmosphere and keep fit and competitive. And so I'd say 80% of them are local colleges, and the rest of them are kind of like former collegiate athletes that are either, still kind of fit, or like, just still trying to hold on to the competitive atmosphere, because it's hard to let go as an athlete. Even I played into my 32. I think I stopped playing at 33, and I was that overweight goalkeeper that, was just getting in the way, and stopping shots. And it was like, and it worked, but it's definitely way different than the USL side. Incredibly different.
And how many players are on these? What's your rosters on this?
So it's kind of like a hockey line. So you'll have like a 3 lines of 5 guys, and then you have your goalkeeper. So it's 6 people on the field. So you're looking at probably dressing 15 to 18 on game day, and then you would have a first line, second line, third line kind of thing. Carry a couple goalkeepers. So a little different there, the 5 lines. So the players are really only getting on the field for like maybe a minute. They'll run on the field, they'll sprint, they'll hit, they'll shoot, and they'll do it as fast as they can for a minute. And then you strategically switch lines one by one. And then the next set does 1 minute. And it's just like, bah, 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 back and forth. And it's like a well-oiled machine, especially if you have good coaches and experienced players. It's like you're watching, it's like you're going to a Kraken game and you're watching those line changes at a Kraken game. And it's like, how the heck, are this is just all in their minds while they play. This is incredible.
Yeah. So what's interesting is I've never watched in arena indoor soccer. I think I need to go, because the way you're describing it, not being a soccer aficionado, how do I want to say this? I'm just not an educated soccer fan. Okay. It's nothing against the game. I'm not educated in the sport, but you're making indoor soccer sound like something with a little bit more, the scoring, like that everyone knows, hey, we scored, yay, win, go. You don't have to know necessarily how the play got set up. You just know that the outcome was that the ball went to the back of the net, or the puck went in the back of the net, or the player crossed home plate, or whatever, went through the uprights. So it's easier to get excited when there's a lot of scoring. And I think I need to go check this out. That sounds like fun. It really does sound like fun. But then you guys do a lot of stuff with kids. And I think that's something that, I'm going to tip my cap to you, because you're raising the next generation of soccer players. You're instructing, giving kids training, you're getting them on the field, opportunity.
Yeah, I think that there's some. So when I played, I played for the Sounders Academy and Olympic development programs as a kid, but I ended up going in to play football for the University of Washington Huskies. And I feel like what happens is, some people make it out of their communities like that, full ride, scholarship, go play sports or become a pro athlete. And some embrace the idea of going back into their communities and trying to impart everything that you've learned and experienced to like this next generation. And I feel like OlyTown, it got to a certain point where I realized OlyTown has these incredibly high caliber players now and access to USL athletes that are Division 1 or pro athletes, international, the Japan national team, the United States national team. And I feel like because this has never been in this community before, I feel like now it's a wonderful opportunity to now have these athletes in front of kids and parents. And whether they're a 7 or 8 or 9-year-old looking up at a hero, or an actual 15 to 17-year-old that needs some of those finer points and thought processes to change their game to the next level, it's like it blows youth training wide open. It just can provide a segment of training here that can maybe inspire the next generation to do bigger and better things from a sports perspective. And so we run clinics and camps. We invite youth teams out to games to walk out players, play at halftime. There's autograph sessions for little kids after games, and because I feel like the sports piece. I feel like there's a lot of people, like, I'm going to say I'm a 90s kid, right? So it's like I was inspired by going and seeing Ken Griffey Jr. in person, or going to see, Neil Megson or Casey Keller play, and whether it was A-League Sounders or MLS Seattle Sounders. And to be able to be next to a pro athlete and have access to them, or even like a collegiate UW Husky, picture day, kids, I feel like, really get inspired in those moments, and it clicks in those moments when they happen, that go, I want to do this. And I want to emulate what I'm inspired by. And then it can change. It changes the course of their lives. And so that's what we're kind of focused on with these kids clinics that we run for soccer.
That's awesome. I think that's awesome. What's the future look like for OlyTown?
It's a good question. It's funny. We've kind of maxed out this arena piece. We're talking about, trying to find a new home, because we want to have a more state-of-the-art facility that's, heated, has parking, has, a larger size field, more seating. So that's on the radar. There's a lot of like buzz and talk about, the future of indoor sports here in Olympia. That's one thing that we're really focusing on. I think the thing that we were just talking about, I think, is actually probably one of the more important things, is trying to bridge the gap between, I hate using the word elite soccer, but we really want to develop some type of youth aspect to OlyTown that, maybe we partner with local youth soccer clubs, because there's so many like of these little youth soccer clubs that, are around, but sometimes we find that a lot of these youth soccer clubs are just coached by, baseball experienced volunteer dads, or fast pitch or basketball moms, and they're all of a sudden coaching a soccer team, and not really able to relate to the actual game and the technical aspects that need to be taught in order for kids to advance locally. And so I think there's this idea that what more can we do in the youth space? What more can we offer? Can we bring higher level coaching down here into Olympia to give kids more opportunity to advance? So I think the youth thing is definitely something. And then my crazy, weird idea that I've actually thought of is I thought it would be cool to have an OlyTown fan shop in downtown Olympia. And it's, maybe a little hole in the wall, a little retail spot, maybe sell some jerseys and serve some coffee and some, beer on tap or something like that. I always thought you could watch a soccer game and buy a jersey and have a cup of coffee or something like that.
Or and a beverage.
And
Yeah. Awesome.
just little crazy things like that I think about sometimes. But I think I really want facility expansion though. I go to a lot of city council and Parks and Rec and Visitors Convention Bureau meetings to try and really push the envelope of getting more soccer fields here. And it really bums me out that there's really only one turf lit soccer field with no football lines and no track in this entire county that has 250,000 people living, across these 5 or 6 towns in Thurston County. And it's, I feel like I'm going to keep doing this OlyTown thing until there's more fields. And it might be a decade before it gets done, but I'm going to keep trying.
There you go. All right. As we wrap this up, I got to ask you some questions I asked you before, but I'm looking for updated answers. All right. Where's a great place in Olympia for coffee these days?
Oh man, that's actually a pretty good one. There's a new kind of a hop-in place. It's right off of, I think it's 4th Avenue. I'm going to actually look it up for you right now, but it's a new coffee spot that it's called Rhythms Coffee. That's what it's called. Rhythms Coffee. So the only, and by the way, I'll still love my Dancing Goats coffee. I still love.
Solid.
That's my go-to when I'm sitting at home, get my Dancing Goats drip coffee. But what's kind of cool about this Rhythms coffee shop, it's a place that has live music at night, has like performances, and things like that. And I think they might do a beer on tap at night, kind of one of those things, but it's all centered around music and it's downtown. So you kind of get that whole downtown Olympia music vibe and then you get a delicious coffee or beer. And it's kind of cool because, I feel like downtown Olympia should be known for music, but the music scene's kind of died down a little bit. So I'm happy to see them bringing it back.
Well, yeah, COVID wiped out a lot of things. So where's a great place around OlyTown for lunch?
Let's see.
What's going on there for food?
Actually, there's a spot that I've been going to that's new since the last time I talked to you. Is Nicole's Bar. Used to be the Oly Underground location, but it's kind of off Legion next to Sylvester Park, kind of by the old Capitol. Nicole's Bar off Legion. So it's 21 and over, but they've got a heck of a lunch menu. Good club sandwich, good burgers. Our play-by-play guy swears that like the meatloaf sliders, they have meatloaf sliders. And I'm not a meatloaf guy, but this guy's a meatloaf guy. And he swears by it. And then obviously full bar. They have great bands. They have live music, I want to say Friday and Saturday night too. But their lunch menu solid. Nicole's Bar off Legion.
Okay. I don't remember if I was asking this question when you were on before. So if it's a repeat, you're going to give me the same answer. But this is how I'm closing out every show. Right now. You ready? Cake or pie, and why?
I would probably say probably pie because it feels maybe a little bit more healthy. But it does remind me of that Jim Gaffigan joke. There's pie in the break room. Somebody's drunk in the kitchen. And I always thought it was interesting. He says, Americans are so fat. They created a thing called a pancake so they could have cake in the morning when they wake up. I'll never forget that joke that Jim Gaffigan said. Oh, I love
That's awesome.
Cake in the morning.
Where can
I always thought that was funny. Cake in the morning. You got to have a pancake.
Yeah, okay. All right. Where can our listeners find out more about what you guys are doing? Where do you want them to go on?
OlyTownFC.com. Also follow us on Instagram at OlyTown FC. The more followers we can get and engagement, the better. And we would love to have you out to games. There's a ticket page at www.olytownfc.com. You can get gear online too, jerseys, replica jerseys, hoodies, beanies, all kinds of good stuff. And everything rolls back into the soccer. So it's a good thing to go and get a ticket or some gear.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, thanks again for making it back on the show. Appreciate it. Best of luck to you guys. I know we're going to end on this one. So USL2 Men's League. National champion was the Ballard FC. Who beat Ballard FC last year?
OlyTown beat Ballard last year. Yep. The only team in the United States to beat Ballard. Yep.
There you go. That's got to be good for the league and for Washington State, though, that another team, I mean, I know you want it to be OlyTown, but that the Ballard FC went and won it all last year.
It's all healthy for soccer, especially local soccer.
Right,
and,
exactly.
Props to Ballard FC winning the whole thing. It's a rare feat to be able to do that across 122 teams across the nation, but also just as cool to upset the number one team playing a man down for 50 minutes and scoring in the last minute of the game. And it was incredible. It was an incredible night to be an OlyTown artisan and from Olympia.
That's awesome. You guys were a man down for
We were a man down for 50 minutes, and we were on the road playing in downtown Seattle at Interbay Stadium at their place. So it was extra special, I think, for the soccer community down here because, it's like the whole, at some point you go to a place and people are wondering, well, what are they going to lose by today? Because the other, Ballard's a great team. They got good recruits, good coaching, and it was just one of those days where, after getting clobbered by them in the previous game, we came out and we won. And it was shocking, I think, to even USL. USL even made a big deal out of it on all of their corporate social media and news. And it was a neat day. It was a special day.
Awesome. Well, again, Ryan, thanks a lot for taking the time to sit down with me today.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much.
Hope you enjoyed the show. You can reach me on Twitter at ExploreWaState. I'd love to hear your comments. You can also visit our website at explorewashingtonstate.com. If you know anyone who would like the show, it'd be amazing if you'd share the show with them. This is the biggest way that we grow this show. Good old word of mouth. I'm glad you were here with me today, and I hope to have you listening to the next episode. See you then.